a bunch of new guys playing with each other for the first time, and Coach Quinn and everything else. And then every game now it seems to be these different things. So the best thing, KD, they can do here is just try and learn from it and go to the next step. And these guys are human, man. Some guy's gonna just not bring it one night. The other thing with Hank too is, his psyche is just playing on his bed, in his head at night when he goes to bed. Should I think about getting out of here and going to a contender? Do I want to sit through, another, 50 games of this stuff? I mean, what's your take on that in terms of, how Hank's thinking in terms of, because ultimately the guy goes on and says he's not going anywhere. But, after these games, man, he looks really kind of just totally bummed out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think he's in a position that he really hasn't been in throughout his career where, he's looking at himself as potentially, a weak link on this team where he was, the guy who was basically dragging the team into the playoffs, basically putting them on his back and taking them where they needed to go. He now is, for the last couple of weeks, basically hasn't been the starter. I mean, Georgiev is getting a majority of the starts now.
But he wasn't feeling well, right? He wasn't feeling well, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, he had a bad back or something, I think, was holding him back. But even still, I mean, Georgiev is still getting the bulk of the starts, seemingly, recently. So I think that is weighing on him. I think after a game like in Anaheim where he's letting in two stoppable goals. You saw the one where he came way out of the net. And he was just completely out of the net when the puck went back to the point and scored. I mean, he's a goalie who stays deep in his crease. He rarely comes out to challenge anyone like that. That's more like a Mike Richter who used to do that, where he used to come all the way out. So to see him sort of, come all the way out and lose his edge and he's sort of flopping around to get back was sort of not, what you're used to from Lundqvist. So yeah, I mean,
he was trying to score.
I don't know what was going on, but he's. I'm sure it's sort of weighing on him a bit, and he's seeing that. Look, that's what happens to all athletes. As they sort of reach the twilight of their career. It's a tough pill to swallow. And sure, is he thinking? Well, I'm sure he is. I'm sure I'm conflicted myself thinking about it, so I can't imagine that he's not either. Just, is that something he wants? Is the cup, does winning a cup mean that much to him? Over finishing his career in New York, I think he should realize at this point that really he has no future here beyond next year. And you mentioned Shesterkin, who is just absolutely tearing things up down in the AHL. Last week, you thought he was doing well. He's now done even better. Although he did get pulled, I think, last night. I heard it wasn't necessarily his fault. He was actually keeping the team in the game. Mm-hmm. They probably just pulled him out because they felt bad for him. He was, getting so many shots against. It's a tough time for Lundqvist. I think also, I think Kreider might be going through the same thing as well. I mean, he did score last game, but I think it's similar to what happened to Zuccarello last year. I think his situation, being a free agent at the end of the year, a lot of trade rumors sort of swirling around regarding Kreider, especially after Hall was just traded. Kreider seems to be, he's sort of the big trade deadline guy now. So I'm sure that's weighing on him, and it's been a reason why, he struggled a bit to score this year too. So like you said, these guys are human, this stuff does bother them. I'm sure both of them, have loved their time in New York. They've both been around just amazing playoff runs, the two of them, and have been a big reason for the success over the last, decade plus, that we've seen here. So, the fact that both of them could be coming to the end of their Rangers career, I'm sure isn't easy for them. And look, they're two veterans on the team that you're counting on for the young guys to look up to and maybe carry the team at times when there is the inconsistencies. So for them to sort of be having a bit of decline or dip in their play, it hurts. It hurts the whole team.
Yeah, I mean, I think staying on Hank here for a second and just listening to what you're saying and everything, and just reflecting on how big a part of this organization he has been and he is and everything, and then always going back to just the way he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to go anywhere, and just thinking about the fact that him not being on this franchise would be something else, just to see him go, but I don't know. Do the Rangers? Would it kill them actually, KD? If I mean, I think it's if it ends up being poor, inconsistent play. And Hank's not going anywhere, and Georgiev stays good. Coach Quinn has every right to just keep. If he gives Georgiev the starting position, he rides him for 10, 15 games. We haven't seen that, especially with Georgiev here, as far as him getting a really, really long stretch of games. So we haven't gotten to that point yet. And as far as Shesty's concerned, I don't know if there's any real rush to get him up here. So. Maybe we just kind of leave the goaltending situation it is and maybe focus a little more on the other stuff that really needs a lot of work. You talk about Kreider and, whether they trade him or not. And when I see CK and he has these moments and stuff, but he's not this game breaker kind of guy, and I don't know if maybe there's just certain times on a team guys either just need to be moved because they're just not gelling with the guys that are either in their lineup or they're not playing well with each other. And the fact that Quinn is changing his lines a lot and trying to figure something out and trying to get things moving, that drives me crazy. I just at this stretch of the game and the season, I brought this up, KD, it's just ride the lines. Let them gel. Let them get going. We've only had one major injury, and that was Mika. And he comes back and, let everything kind of gel a little bit. But the other thing, too, that I think you've talked about this before, and maybe to go over it again, is the one-dimensional theme here on the team. Is Kreider that kind of a guy? What's your take on that as far as, we've got the charisma and the pizzazz of Panarin and even Zibanejad for that aspect. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he scores that goal 10 seconds into the game the other night. He's just, Mika's just got it. He's an experienced guy. We don't have to worry about Otemi. There's a couple other guys we probably don't really have to worry about, except, that long laundry list of guys who haven't scored. But what do you see in terms of what do you think's causing that all of a sudden? Or is it just general pro hockey? Everybody goes through these slumps.
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this last week a little bit when I was in the cave, that, and actually Larry Brooks, he must have heard us in the cave last week, but, he mentioned it today as well, that, they are very one-dimensional. They're not a team that you see with a hard forecheck. There's not a dump and chase going on with this team where they're riding the other team's defenseman hard. It's a real skill-oriented team. I mean, you do have a Lemieux, and like you mentioned Kreider, but Kreider is struggling. So, you have the Hedels and the Buchneviches and the Kakos, and, they're all trying to stick handle through everybody, and they're holding on to the puck too long. And when the other team game plans for that, because look, everybody does the advanced scouting on other teams. They have a huge game plan on the Rangers, and they're like, look, this team likes to carry the puck. They got, a big skill level, and we want to take that away. So when they have to be in a position to potentially dump and chase, hard forecheck, bounce bodies around, physical hockey, they just can't play it. They're just not built, for that type of hockey. And the guy, I mean, a guy like Buchnevich, you're just not going to see get in there and throw his body around on the forecheck. He's just not built that way. And that's fine. But if you don't have complementary players to go around and do that type of thing, you're going to go through these type of stretches because you can't just play the same way all the time. You're going to need certain players to step up who have more of a grinding presence and more grit. And unfortunately, when the guys that you do have in the lineup are, Smith and McKegg, their skill level really is lacking there because you have to be more than just, a tough guy out there who could throw the body around. It's you have to be able to throw the body around, and when you have the puck, be able to do something with it. Now, there's not a lot of those type of players in the league, and I think we do have one in Lemieux, or a guy who is, look, he's only in his second NHL year. So maybe a guy who could turn into that. But, I feel like that type of player, is missing from that lineup. I think you need a couple of them to be successful right now, or for this team to be successful. Maybe stop some of the inconsistencies that they have. So, look, I don't know. I mean, I'm not really looking to make a trade for Buchnevich. I still want to see this team develop some more. But I would say going forward, when this team is ready to contend, they're going to need a couple of those players in the lineup.
Well, then that's going to be the magic question then, as far as where JD and Gorton stand here. If we're if me and you come out of retirement and off the golf courses to join this little party here that the New York Rangers are throwing called Welcome to the Rebuild. Then we just kind of got to stick with it. Maybe they're going to stick with it. I mean, we can't really sit here. Do we honestly sit here and start talking about, moving pieces right now? For what particular reason? So if we take this as a clean slate and, yeah, you want to make the playoffs. Coach Quinn talks about making the playoffs. Everybody does. The way the league is structured right now, the parity and everything else, the wild card system, if you stay healthy and you stay close, around April and March, you have a chance to get into the playoffs. But does this team really need to try and, outside of trading guys for draft picks, we're not going to be trading guys for, immediate fixes here, right, KD?
Oh, no. I think that for me, the only two players that should really be on the block right now, or that and that could have any type of trade value for other teams, is Kreider and Strome. I think the Rangers should dangle those two, see what they can get. I mean, the rumors coming out right now, I forgot who was putting out there, with Dredger or whoever it was saying Kreider at this point can get a first round pick and a prospect. I think I would do that if I was the Rangers. I mean, I would still talk to Kreider about an extension, but anything beyond 4 years is a non-starter for me, because we sit and we talk about Lundqvist's contract and the back end of it and how it's hurting them now, salary cap wise. I mean, that same thing's going to happen to Kreider if you give him like a 7-year deal. You don't want it, a guy like Kreider in his mid to late 30s, and he's struggling now. What's that going to look like in 7 years? So, unless he's willing to sign a short-term deal, if you can get a team to give up a first-round pick and a prospect, which is what they got for Hayes last year, I think you have to do it. Again, this team is still rebuilding. Even though, we sit here and we complain about certain aspects of the team, it is still a rebuild. We can complain about it as, on a short-term basis or a now basis, but long-term, I don't think you want to be making, trades, especially with the younger players. And if you could still stockpile draft picks and, get them down in the system in Hartford and build them up down there, and you have this now great pipeline and great, system to pull from year after year, I think you have to do that. The only other wild card in potential trades is Georgiev. I think that, if you can get something solid from him, and Lundqvist is like, I am not waiving my no trade clause. I don't care what you do or what you say or what you offer or, how many pats on the back you give me. At some point you're going to have to make a decision with these goalies, and they have other goalies in the system too. It's not like it's these three and then it's a fall off. They have a lot of, younger goalies. I forgot what the goalie's name who's in college now. They saw a graphic the other day. The Rangers had the best goals against average goalie in the NHL, the AHL, and in college, or something along the save percentage or whatever it was. So, they have a lot of goaltending prospects in the system. So, if they do give up Georgiev, I think they have enough in the system to make up for it. Look, it could blow up in their face too if Georgiev goes somewhere and turns into a Vezina caliber goalie. I mean, you saw that happen to the Flyers with Bobrovsky. You don't want to see that happen with us as well. But, I think you do have to dangle Georgiev out there, see what potentially he can get. If it's not much, then you keep him. And you deal with the 3-headed goalie monster next year and see where that takes you. But, I think in a rebuild at this point. You have to see what's available and what you could bring in prospect and draft pick wise.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the other thing that nobody saw